Hello indie game fans, bunny girls, some very weird games, all action shooters and more in this edition of surprise releases, so let's begin with Code Bunny, a 2D action platformer that sure seems to be inspired by Sonic, with the gotta go fast gameplay. There are two playable characters, one wearing a special suit and the other with a deadly cursed sword, where the developers note that movement and combat are one and the same. For example, as you run into enemies, you can switch to a spin attack to bounce between and damage them, and from there, gain access to the combat arts, which sees your character plummeting to the ground in a diving attack, making that action fast-paced and fun. This is currently only on itch.io, with a Steam release probably to come at a later date, so in the meantime, you have to get it from there. Okay, this game is a real throwback since the original Elephant Rave and the wonderful Elephant games are made by a Flash game legend JMTB02, being a critical part of many childhoods, and with the demise of Flash, he has taken his work to Steam with the sequel Elephant Rave 2, in which you need to dodge beams of light and is completely free as well. This video is brought to you by Diluvian Ultra Chapter 1, a first-person shooter with a fantastic throwback look and fast-paced action. You play as the immortal warrior prince Attila, who is awakened after millennia in deep space by the invasion of his tomb ship. So pick up your arms and obliterate your enemies. One thing that I quite like about this game is the aesthetics. Rather than going for the grey-brown grimdark direction, this game is rather colourful instead, taking inspiration from pop science fiction novels, which is definitely a curiosity. In terms of gameplay, the Blood Sword is your weapon of choice, and as for ranged options, they are not just traditional technological firearms but also organic weapons which you need to combine in order to strip your enemies of their armor first so you can easily finish them off. Diluvian Ultra also has a focus on mobility with moves like a double jump and dash, so it's old school boomer shooter action through and through. The Chapter 1 packaging comprises of 10 levels and is supposed to have a full game's worth of content, but the developers are planning to continue Attila's story through DLCs, which is the modern version of old school episodes or level chapters found in games like Doom. So if interested, pick up Diluvian Ultra via the link in the description below. I have a couple of older titles that were brought up in my interactions with developers on Twitter, such as Keeper's Toll. Yes, another Bullet Heaven title, but one which has a neat pixel art look and is doing okay since its early access release in May 2023. I like how the boss fights appear to be more intentional, with actual bosses instead of blown up and recolored sprites, such as the crawling skeleton at the start of this trailer and the giant tree boss shown off. This subgenre is very played out by now, but if you're in the mood for another one of these, perhaps give it a look. I'm not usually a horror game person, so I missed the Indigo Parallel back in November last year, with this being a surreal first-person shooter set in a bizarre world as our hero sinks into the depths of madness. It is said to combine the narrative experimentation of the Stanley Parable with LSD Dream Emulator, which is an actual game, so if you love weird stuff, check this game out.
Hi, I'm Connie Taviti. I'm a well-known DJ here on Conbunn Island.
An adorable looking 3D platformer is Conbunn Cardboard, one that uses flat 2D characters in a 3D world, which might take some getting used to, but it's an adorable and light-hearted platformer in which you're searching for and collecting lost CDs.
Remember the CD albums you gave to me? Uh-huh. You like them? I lost them. You what? So, I need them for today. I have a session.
The cardboard world, which is reminiscent of Paper Mario, looks interesting and is a short game for a small price, with Steam reviews clamoring for more, so that's always a good sign. In hindsight, I think it's interesting that End of Nights is a thing, being another vampire survival style roguelike title, but curiously, it's melee combat focused, which is different. You do need to charge headfirst into danger in order to destroy your enemies, with the premise being that you have to defend your stronghold with upgrades in between runs and having a great pixel art look as well. Remember when I said that I had weird games? Snake Farm is the prime example of that, being, frankly, quite an ugly game, and from a pure top-down perspective no less, in which you're buying snakes, fighting them to get snake oil, selling said oil in order to buy more snakes and so on, with the developer stating in all caps on their store page, oil is life, life is money, and money is death. Purchasing snakes to fight is interesting since you're deciding on your own enemies, and with only 10 days left to live, has a very interesting gameplay loop. They are all the roguelike progression elements and is by all accounts pretty good, so do not judge this book by its cover.
Greetings, Viceroys, and welcome to the Ancient Seals Overview Briefing. Let's not waste time. The Blight Storm is almost upon us. It's our last chance to close the Ancient Seal.
For all the hype around platformers, Metroidvanias and roguelites, it appears that the deeper strategy and simulation games is where the money is at, with titles like Airborne Kingdom, Timberborn and Against the Storm doing very well over the long run, with this currently having 13,000 Steam reviews, and that's after its Epic Games Store launch. So to say this game is doing well is an understatement. They've just released the Sealed Forest update, which adds a new biome in the titular area, the introduction of ancient seals which are holding back some primeval evils, and of course, over time, the seals have weakened and the evil gods are gaining back a foothold in our world, so it is up to you to journey there and to reforge the seals. This also introduces plagues to the game, which are gameplay disrupting events, but you do have beacon towers to counter these, making this survival city builder even better, even though it's already very impressive. Speaking of impressive, this action-adventure crafting simulation title also got a major update, where in Lens Island, it mixes real-time action-adventure combat with farming, fishing, chopping trees, base building, villager, NPCs and more, which is pretty impressive in early access so far, with the major update titled Cursed Underworld being of interest. It is a pretty major update that rebuilt the game from the ground up, so much so that the developer recommended people to start a new save, although old saves are still compatible, with some pretty major changes such as the removal of an entire town. Various gameplay systems were also changed significantly, as well as the introduction of a new peaceful game mode which is much more forgiving and more. The Cursed Dungeons in the Underworld is also a new feature, being a more hardcore version of regular dungeons with new enemies, traps and better loot, being a rather impressive piece of work overall.
Last hordes of demons.
We also had the 1.0 release of this sleek-looking first-person shooter titled War Strike Challenges, taking place in discrete levels which have a time trial element to them, in which it's all action all the time. The movement and gunplay is very fast as you speed through the levels, blasting away at demons as quickly as you can, where you can find more upcoming first-person shooters in this video.